All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining today. Hope you're staying safe, hope you're staying healthy. We're going to take a look today at two core services on the platform, our private document store and private document exchange. Those go hand in hand, and then our app-to-app messaging. The nice thing is that architecturally, they're almost identical. So once you have your head wrapped around the asymmetric cryptography and the actual transport constructs, you can apply those literally back and forth to both of the services. We touch on a lot here in Kaleido that the actual blockchain is a really small piece of the overall solution. And this is a great personification, these two services. This deals really closely with where we keep our data, how we represent our data on chain, and then how we exchange core messages and core pieces of private or functional data. So in this diagram right here, we'll see the fourth and the second layer, really hit upon very heavily. So just wanted to show that. We'll look at the architecture very quickly, and then we'll dive directly into the product here. So starting with the document store service. This is pretty straightforward to wrap your head around, but we'll touch on a couple of things. First and foremost, the real power, the real value of this service is that it's going to integrate with your existing private document stores, your existing cloud utilities, whether that's Microsoft Azure Blob Containers or an AWS S3 bucket. And Kaleido is not going to persist that data for you. Instead, Kaleido will just mirror the existence of that data. So if you add into your private document store on Kaleido, you'll see that represented in your private cloud utility. Vice versa, if you delete an asset from your private cloud utility, you'll see that deleted on Kaleido. Kaleido will do some fun things and some valuable things for you, like calculating the hash and allowing you to have this secure construct, this secure transport layer to exchange the data. So let's touch on that real quickly. So the storage is valuable. You can hash that data. You can represent that data on chain. And then very valuably, you can also exchange that data. So how does that work? So under the covers in Kaleido, we have a whole transport layer underpinned by Apache Kafka. And we use this for our REST API gateway to get you reliable transaction submission. We use this for our event streams to get you reliable delivery of those pertinent state changes. But we also use it for the app-to-app messaging and for the document store. So it's going to give you that secure, guaranteed, reliable delivery. And the asymmetric cryptography that comes in here is around what we call destinations. And you can think of those just like inboxes or mailboxes. So with your service, you can have one or more destinations, and those destinations are underpinned by an X509 certificate. So very simply, this is 101 of asymmetric cryptography, but if I'm going to transfer a private document, some payload to client B, and this could be, again, this could be a document or this could be a message. These architectures are identical. I'm going to take the certificate of the destination that I'm sending that document to or that message to, and I'm going to encrypt that payload with the certificate. This entity, this organization, this member of your business network is the only one in possession of the private key. Therefore, they're the only one that's going to be able to decrypt that payload. Now, a lot of other fun things happen inside the transport layer. You have compression, you have sharding, you have a signature from the sender, and you have a sign verify from the receiver. But essentially, all of those shards are going to get enveloped, they're going to get reassembled, they're going to get decrypted, and then they're going to get acknowledged and verified by this client. So that's essentially how it works on a 101 level. Oops, not the terminal, we want this. And then the other piece that goes hand in hand here is around where those certificates are actually stored, those underlying X509s. And those exist inside of a service that we have called the ID Registry. And this is actually an on-chain smart contract that's going to store key value pairs for the existing members inside of the network. So at the top of each profile, as we call it, you have a parental X509 certificate that's emblematic, representative of the membership or of the organization. And these can be externally signed, or you can take the easy route and self-sign on Kaleido, which we actually recommend for ease of use of all these services. But underneath these parental X509 certificates, you start having key value pairs. And one example of those key value pairs is a destination URL and a corresponding certificate. And these are very easy to visualize inside of the V2 platform. And I'll show you guys how those look as well. So these are the two core pieces right here that are going to work with document store and with app-to-app messaging. The on-chain registry is applicable to both. So super quickly, we'll take a look at the app-to-app messaging here. And you can see nearly an identical diagram that we have. So instead of, large private data, maybe a legal contract, maybe, many pages of pharmaceutical trials, this would be more applicable to IoT sensors or to, financial use cases where you just need a ping or you need an acknowledgement. These are for, high speed, quick messages, high frequency. So just think of big data, use the document store, keep that off chain, sort of high frequency, lightweight messages, app-to-app messaging makes more sense there. But as I said, architecturally and with the destinations and with the synergy with the on-chain registry, they truly are identical. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop right into it. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually show you guys how easy it is to do all of this from scratch and integrate with either AWS S3 or an Azure Blob Container. The configurations have gotten, noticeably easier, very, very straightforward, very, very intuitive. And then the interface and the APIs have also been incredibly elevated as well. So here I have an environment, just a baseline environment, Geth POA. I have two memberships, Alpha Org and Bravo Org, and they're each running a node inside of the network. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go into our B2B communications tab here, and we want to click on the dashboard. And we see that we sort of have two buckets to choose from. We have our docs and we have our app-to-app messaging. So we'll go with the document exchange, go ahead and click create new. Of course, just like any service, any node, any app credential, you're going to choose the membership. You can choose the object that you want to bind it to. We'll go with the Alpha Org here for this one. So I'll just call this app Alpha. I can type. Click next. And now we need to choose what kind of storage that we want. Do we want Kaleido to actually host those in a container and persist those files on our behalf, or do we want to integrate with some external storage? And what we want to do here is we actually want to integrate with external storage. So I'm not going to be able to do this right now because I don't have a storage configuration object. So we see that call to action right here. You need a config object in order to attach it to this service. So we can either click create right here, or conveniently, as I said, the dashboard has gotten a lot more intuitive. We can just go to cloud configurations and we can click storage right here. And now we want to create our first storage configuration. So we'll create one for Alpha. We'll put this guy in AWS, just call him, what is it, S3 config. Try to give intuitive names. First, choose the configuration provider. Yes, we're going with AWS. Choose the region where you have your actual utility, your S3 bucket hosted. And maybe before we do this, let's take a peek inside of the actual AWS console, and this will provide some more context. So here we are inside of the AWS Management Console, and there's two key pieces that we need here. We need a user, we need an identity with an access key and an access token, and then that identity needs to have some privileges. It needs to be able to do things with your hosted utilities in your private AWS account. Namely, it needs access to your S3 bucket. It's going to need to be able to read, it's going to need to be able to write, and it's going to need to be able to list. You need to create a custom policy. So if we go into the identity access management here, we click on our users. I have one called Kaleido User 1. And we see here that I've attached a policy called Kaleido Storage. And all I've done here is I've created a custom S3 policy, and I've given the policy those permissions, those core permissions: read, write, and list. And these are going to be different based on every organization. All orgs have different mandates and different security requirements. So it's not sort of a one-size-fits-all here, but those are core permissions that are required. So once you've attached that policy, you're good to go. You just need to go ahead and actually create a bucket. You need to create a storage utility, and that's done within sort of the S3 area here. So if we go to S3, you'll see that I have an existing bucket, Kaleido Bucket 1, and we've attached our policy to that user. So very, very straightforward. These are the core things that Kaleido needs to know about: your bucket name, your user ID, and then that policy needs to be attached to it as well. So users, again, back here, security credentials. So these are the two strings that Kaleido is going to care about for the authentication: the access key ID, and then the actual secret for that access key. So I have those stored on a notepad here, so we can go ahead and create this config. So my bucket is hosted in Virginia, so that's US East-1. Now we want to go ahead and paste the key. Just bear with me as I do some copy-paste on a notepad. We'll paste the key, and then we'll go ahead and paste the secret. And if this ends up taking too long, I've already configured this in a different business network, so we can hop to the easy button. But I just want to show in real time how easy this is to do. So the last thing we need to do is confirm the name of the bucket that we have. I believe it was Kaleido Bucket 1. So S3, Kaleido Bucket 1. So pretty straightforward. And go ahead and click finish. And if all of those parameters are right, this configuration object will be created. We see that it's inactive because it hasn't been actually attached to a running service. So that makes a lot of sense. So while we're in here, let's just go ahead and create one for our Azure config. Azure is a tad bit easier than AWS. It just needs the name of your blob storage, it needs the name of your container, and then it needs an access key as well. So here we have the storage account, Kaleido Blob. Here we have a container, that's called Kaleido Storage 1. And inside of here, we have some access keys. The important thing here is you're going to have a couple access keys. So you need to make sure on this shared access signature, you have the right key enumerated, or you know which key is enumerated right here in this panel. So mine is key number 1. So this is the key that I'm going to provide to Kaleido for that authentication. So this is the key that we're interested in for Azure. So I'll go ahead and copy this guy on the clipboard. And then we can just go ahead and manually type down those other 2 strings, Kaleido Blob and Kaleido Storage 1. So copy that, go back here, we'll create a new storage config, we'll bind it to Bravo, and we'll just call this Azure config for ease of use. Now we're going to switch to Azure. We need the storage account name, that's Kaleido Blob. We need the access key, which I have on the clipboard. And we need the name of the blob container, which is Kaleido Storage 1. So pretty straightforward. It creates that object. And now we have 2 objects that we can bind with active services. So let's go back to the B2B communications. Let's go to the documents and let's add some runtimes. We can do that either from this tab or we can do it from the dashboard tab. Both of those are going to work. So again, let's call this app to app 1. We can deploy it in any of the whitelisted regions that I have. I'm going to keep everything in AWS. If you have an Azure config, you don't actually have to deploy that inside of a Microsoft Azure region. You can deploy the Kaleido service inside of an AWS region, and then you can integrate it with other cloud providers too. So we're going external storage. This one's AWS, so we'll go with S3 config right here. Click next. This is a new improvement that we've made to the document store service and to app. You'll see that shortly. But it's just based on your business requirements and your use case. How many files do you need to transfer? What's the size of those files? And how much do you need to persist, or how much do you need to store? So these are very, very intuitive, very self-explanatory, small, medium, large. I'll do medium just for the novelty of it, for not doing small on everything. So here's our first guy that we've bound to AWS. And let's go ahead and add one for our Azure blob container. So we'll call this app to app number 2. And we'll leave it in AWS. And then we'll bind that Azure blob config that we just created. Make this guy medium as well. So one interesting thing to note is, as I said, Kaleido is going to mirror the existence of your existing data that you have inside of your bucket. So here we have a Kaleido bucket 1, and we see that I have a vanilla bean.jpg inside of it. And we see that Kaleido's also given us a little dummy test file to make sure that all of the security and all of the permissions are right. But what we'll see here when I go ahead and open up my storage utility on Kaleido, we'll see the presence of this vanilla bean. And likewise, inside of our Azure blob container, we'll see the presence of, hopefully something I put in there, a blueberries picture. So we can hop back, we can switch to number 1, click on our documents, and we see our vanilla bean. So Kaleido is not persisting this. Again, I'm going to reiterate on that. Kaleido is just mirroring the presence of this data. And we see that Kaleido hasn't even calculated a hash because it hasn't been uploaded via the service or via the Kaleido API. We can go back to the second instance, the Azure guy, and we'll see those blueberries right there. Okay, so a lot of talking there. That's sort of step 1 of how to configure and how to integrate and how the data is mirrored. Very easy to just calculate the hash if you are interested in that and putting some of that on chain. like I said, if it goes through the Kaleido API, you get the hash for free. So the next thing we need with this service, the other core piece to get the real functionality out of it, to be able to transfer within your business network, we need those inboxes. We need those destinations. So I'm going to go ahead and create the first destination, and we're going to see a lot of errors. Kaleido is going to say, hey, there's a lot of things that you need that you haven't configured on your network. Namely, you need that parental X509 certificate bound to your membership, right here, number 2. You need an on-chain registry, and then you need to take that certificate in a proof, and you need to put it inside of that smart contract, inside of that on-chain registry. And this is critical to the underlying asymmetric cryptography. But the nice thing here is Kaleido will do all of this for you. One click, it'll provision the ID registry, it'll give you that self-signed X509, and then it'll make that call to the smart contract on your behalf. If you are doing this yourself, it can get a bit burdensome on the programmatic level. It's very doable, it's very accomplishable, it's all documented. But for just simple ease of use and extracting immediate functionality, this is sort of the recommended happy path right here. So all of this is established. We can click next, and now we just need a name for the destination. I believe I was doing this for AppTap1, yeah. So this is going to be our alpha inbox. We can just call it alpha123 right here. Click finish, and this will take 10 or 15 seconds to actually persist. Because remember, when we're creating this destination, we're also creating an underlying X509 that's specific to that destination. And then we need to make another call to our on-chain registry to actually upload that certificate. And we will see that here in a second. We'll see a key value pair where this is the key and that actual X509 is the value. So let me just grab a quick destination for our Bravo membership and the Azure configuration. So again, we see those two warnings, but we see that the smart contract, the ID registry, has been deployed. So Kaleido will do the heavy lifting again. It'll invoke that smart contract and pass the certificate that was just created here. And then we'll be able to create a destination for Bravo. I'll call that Bravo123 as well. And similarly, we're going to have to wait about 10 seconds because it's generating the destination certificate, and then it's invoking the ID registry with that destination certificate. Okay, so we have our two certificates. Let's take a step backwards and let's actually look at the address book. Let's look at some of these memberships and let's see the existence of those destinations and those certificates inside of the on-chain profile, inside of the ID registry. Let me extend this session right here. So here we see some lightweight information about the self-signed certificate that Kaleido generated for us. We can download that, we can parse it, or we can just click this on-chain profile here, and this is exactly what we see. We see the destination URL, and we see that underlying X509 certificate that is going to be instrumental in our asymmetric cryptography. We can do the exact same thing for Bravo, and we'll see, we'll see its corresponding destination and certificate as well. Okay. So now let's do a couple things. Let's go ahead and transfer a document. I think we can just do one action here, and it'll sort of encapsulate the entire functionality. But let's just go ahead and transfer a document from the AWS configure document exchange to the Azure configure document exchange, and then we can take a peek at the Azure document exchange, and we should see that data right there. So this guy's only got blueberries. This guy's only got the vanilla bean right here. So what we'll do is we'll transfer the vanilla bean using the Kaleido plumbing, and we should see that persisted inside of the private organizationally controlled Azure Block container. So let's go to transfers. Oh, sorry, let's go to documents, and let's go ahead and choose the send document or the transfer action. And now we just need to choose who we're sending it to. So the receiver is Bravo, the destination is Bravo123, and we are the sender. So this is what it's going to get sort of signed with. It's going to get encrypted with its certificate. It's going to get signed with our private signature. So we can go ahead and click transfer right there, and this will get sent and transported again via all of that Kafka plumbing that exists inside of Kaleido. So if we go ahead and switch right here to app number 2, and we go ahead and click on transfers. Go back to app number 1. Okay, so this has been sent. And let's go to number 2. Let's give this a refresh. Okay, so just needed a quick refresh in the dashboard. So this has been received right here, and now we should also see this persisted inside of the Azure instance right here. So it's not just Kaleido that needs to refresh. A lot of these cloud utilities need to refresh as well. So inside of the received folder, inside of the destinations folder, and then there we see the vanillabean.jpg right there. So very, very straightforward. I think that's probably enough to touch on. The functionality is going to exist the exact same way too. So we see that if we sort of like send documents inside of Kaleido, we'll see them persisted here, and vice versa. We can actually delete documents inside of our cloud utility, and those will be removed on Kaleido as well. So we can delete the vanilla bean if we wanted, and then that should also delete it from the Kaleido blob or the Kaleido document exchange container. Boom. So all we have is a permissions test. Okay, so pretty straightforward there. With document exchange, we have added some more metrics and some more visualization tools as well. So inside of the health and monitoring tab right here, not only do you have all of the great stuff for transactions and all of the blockchain level stuff, but you're now getting metrics, you're now getting data for the critical off-chain services and those off-chain transactions, such as app-to-app messaging or such as document exchange here. These are sort of long-lived metrics. These are meant to give you a holistic line of sight on all of the transfers. So these aren't real-time updates, but over the course of a day or a week or a month, if you want that macro view of what your organization has done, whether it's send or receive, you're going to have that available here for you as well. Okay, so we actually have this filtered on app to app right here. What we want is documents. All right, so now let's go ahead and switch gears and let's take a look at the app-to-app messaging. Again, very, very similar architecture and very, very similar sort of configuration too. Namely, you got to have a destination. So we can go ahead and create some services for app-to-app. Again, inside of the B2B communications tab here. So first we want to add a runtime for, oh, I called those services app-to-app. Sorry, those are document exchange services, not app-to-app services. So we'll call this guy, we're going to give it the same name, app-to-app. We'll give it an underscore on this one. App-to-app number 1, click next. Again, we're going to see similar t-shirt sizes. So based on the number of transfers, the frequency of the transfers, choose the appropriate t-shirt size, just like a node. We'll go ahead and provision one for our second membership right here for Bravo. App to app number 2. And for my own sanity, as those are provisioning, what I'll do is I'll rename these services. So if we do right here, see I named this app to app number 1, we can just click settings and we can change the name right there. So we could call this doc store number 1. Go ahead and save that. And then we can change the name for this guy right here as well. Got my wires crossed just a bit. These services are so similar, I transposed the names. So let's go ahead and go back. We can go into the messaging right here, or we can click the dashboard, and we see that both of these have started. So I'll click alpha. This isn't really any good to us unless we have destinations. So first we want to create a destination. And it's going to follow the exact same flow that we have right here. It's just going to say, hey, do you have the prerequisites configured? Yes, you do. Go ahead and create a destination. One thing that's different here is that you can actually choose to do more self-managed cryptography. You can go ahead and do the signing of those messages and the actual verification of the messages. Pretty straightforward, but it's putting another burden on you at the cryptographic level. So again, the real happy path, the true easy button is just to let Kaleido manage the destination key. If instead you want to actually generate your own private key and create your own certificate for this App Store instance, Kaleido will let you do that as well. So based on your security requirements, based on your organizational mandates, you can choose the appropriate path here. I'm going with the easy button. So go ahead and click finish. And again, 5 to 10 seconds because we need to generate a cert and we need to invoke the ID registry, the on-chain smart contract. So we have a destination for our first instance, and now we just need to create a destination for our second instance. And this will be just about as fast right here because we have all the prerequisites. Bravo 123. Go ahead and click finish. So I'm going to switch to a different business network and a pre-configured environment for this, just so I don't have to demonstrate editing a bunch of JavaScript code and invoking and injecting application credentials and all these strings for destinations and all the WebSocket connections for the socket IO. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard, go back to the network right here, and I'm going to switch to testnet number 1 that I have here. But that's sort of the very easy way to stand up the service and then just create that destination. So I have an environment called dev number 1 right here. You're going to see very similar constructs and very similar naming conventions. Click on my dashboard. I have 2 app-to-app instances right here, Alpha and Bravo. And what you need now in order to securely send these messages, you're going to need a secure connection to your WebSocket endpoint, your socket IO connection. And in order to do that, this is just like you're talking to a node or you're talking to another service on Kaleido. You need strongly generated credentials, what we call application credentials. And I've created 2 sets inside of here. So one of the best practices here when you're dealing with application credentials, if you're going to have a hardened service or a hardened application, is to really be conscientious that you're leaving those as static credentials. You can definitely cycle the credentials and you can write cron jobs to delete them every 12 hours or every 72 hours. But it's key that you don't actually click regenerate, that you don't regenerate the password for an existing user ID. That's what I mean by static. We don't want that dynamic sort of evolution of an application credential. So here in security, what you'll see is I've created 2 application credentials, one for the Alpha organization and one for the Bravo organization, each of whom has an app-to-app instance right there. So these inside of the application code, which we'll look at in a second, these are what is going to provide that secure connectivity. Okay, so let's go back to this tab and then we'll look at the application code very quickly. So we can see that we have the destination, we have the dashboard, and then we can see here that we have some information about some messages I sent earlier and current client connections. So let me grab the app code that we're going to use here and make this a bit bigger. And this is pretty straightforward as well. We have some JavaScript code for Alpha organization. They're going to be our producer or our sender. And then Bravo organization is going to be our consumer or our receiver right here. And we see that the code's very straightforward. We're connecting to that WebSocket endpoint. This is our socket IO connection. This is going to give us all the events that we want. These are the strongly generated application credentials that I had persisted inside of that security section right there. And then this is what we're doing right here. We're producing messages from our inbox, from our destination, and we're sending them to the Bravo destination right here. And this is what we're sending. We're sending a really fun string called testing 1-2-3 right there. So very straightforward. These are the core things you need. You need your connection, and then you need to say, where is it coming from and who are you sending it to? If you are doing the self-managed cryptography route here, this gets a bit more involved in, obviously you're going to need the path to your private key corresponding, with your destination. You need to sign that message. You need the certificate for the receiver, and you need to encrypt that message, etc. Receiver, very, very straightforward as well. They have a connection to their WebSocket endpoint. They have their own strongly generated application credentials, and then they are subscribed to their inbox, where the sender is going to be sending these messages. So that's the code. This is available inside of the documentation. Very straightforward. You can get as elaborate as you want with this, and of course, I hope it goes without saying, with document store and with app-to-app messaging, you can actually create as many destinations as you need. So if you want to compartmentalize, different business segments, for example, you could have a destination for each of those. So what we'll do now is we'll just go ahead and kick off sort of both of these programs, and we can see how these look within the context of the dashboard. So first, we'll go to connected clients for Alpha 1. This is our sender. This is the Alpha organization. Let me switch the terminal with PowerPoint. Okay, and I'll go to the terminal. Okay, so on the left is the sender, on the right is the receiver right here. So this guy's going to be sending some content value of testing 1-2-3. And when this guy actually starts consuming the events, when he connects to his WebSocket connection, we'll see all of those payloads, all of those messages persisted inside of the terminal, but in real life, inside of your application, or sent to a database. So node sender, he's going to connect. We can go back here and we see immediately that we have a new connected client, and we'll see in real time the update of not only the bytes and the chunks, but the actual messages. This is really a lightweight string, so it doesn't have to get sharded or chunked right here, but we do see the live dynamic update of those messages being sent right there. So now we can go to Bravo over here, click on connected clients. We see that nothing has been connected. And now we can kick him off. We can allow him to connect to his WebSocket endpoint and actually become a consumer. He's now successfully subscribed. We see that update in real time. And then all of these messages, again, this is Kafka, so they're going to get persisted, they're going to get buffered and queued, and then all of them are going to get delivered. And again, based on the performance, based on the amount that you need to consume or you need to send, that's where we have the t-shirt sizes for document exchange and for app-to-app messaging as well. We have the logs, so if you have something go wrong, you can very easily debug. Have the settings if you want to change the name or change the size or restart or delete. This is quite a convenient feature as well, not only with the nodes, but with these services. As you realize that you need more functionality or you need more throughput, you can do this inside of the dashboard, or you can very easily automate this with the API. So if you do have, if you know at a certain time each day you're going to have spikes in your workload, you can write a little cron job to dynamically upgrade the size of your core services. And then as soon as that surge or that peak is over, you can immediately downgrade them as well. So we're allowing you to build in all of that automation, all that functionality very easily as well. So that was sort of the idea around a lot of the new APIs that we have here as well. Again, lastly, we can go to the help and monitoring. We can click on the messaging. We'll see the existence of those messages that were sent, received. Go back to the documents, and we didn't do anything really fun with the documents, so we don't have any fun data here. But these are going to give you great information for a network operator or for a system monitor that needs to have that good, I guess, transparent view of everything that's happened inside of the network, that needs that full life cycle view and that current active view as well. So those are the core services that I really wanted to touch on, show you guys how easy it was to create those cloud configurations, how we're going to see a direct symmetry between what you do in Kaleido and what you do in your own privately controlled cloud storage utility, and then show you, sort of how you can apply those same constructs with destinations and with the ID registry to sort of your application tier. We have another demo. I'm not going to show it today. It's in the archives. It's on our YouTube page. But it shows you how easy it is to weave document store into a full stack application. So when we send out the recording, we'll send out the link to that demo just in case any folks missed it. But it's a great personification, representation of how you can stitch together all of these core services and really extract some powerful functionality from the Kaleido platform. So I don't see any questions in the Q&A or in the chat, but I'm going to pause for 30 seconds or a minute just in case anyone does have a question and wants to chime in. Going once, going twice. Okay, so last thing I'll do is I'll leave my email inside of the chat. If anyone has any technical or commercial questions, happy to touch base on any of those topics with you guys. Make sure we send this to all the attendees. If you have any support concerns, you can always contact support@kaleido.io. And you can find a lot of additional information, not only within the console, but also on our website on Kaleido.io. Information about our services, information about our pricing, information around case studies, different customer success stories, etc. So encourage you guys to check out the docs, check out the APIs if you're of a technical mindset. If you're more on the business side, definitely check out the website and look at some of those higher level macro views of how blockchain has provided real value. So thanks everyone for attending. Next week we have Chainlink joining us. So that's a decentralized Oracle service. Fits really, really nicely in a ton of use cases. They're having a lot of traction and a lot of interest in the market. If you guys keep an eye on sort of public crypto markets, their coin is doing exceptionally well over the last 12 to 18 months. So excited to have a few of their folks joining us and teaching us more about Chainlink, something that we've had in the platform for quite some time, but always great to get the subject matter experts on board to share their insights as well. So really appreciate everyone joining today. This is recorded. You'll receive the recording. And if you're interested in past recordings, just youtube.com and search Kaleido Blockchain. They're all sitting there and they are all curated for your viewing. So without further ado, I think we'll call it quits for today, and a final thank you from me for everyone that attended. Have a great day.